Hi everyone, welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, but also don't forget to ring that little bell, because you know why? YouTube is doing this weird thing where they're curating your subscription feed, so you may not see me exactly when I put up a new video or I do a live stream. So ring that little bell, that way you get notifications on YouTube and via email. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a very special guest. She's someone that I've admired for a long time. Her name is Amanda Head. She is known as the Hollywood Conservative. She's an actress who has been in several films, and also she is a hardcore conservative. She stands up for conservative values right here in Los Angeles, California. As most of you know, I'm a Texan who somehow got lost on his way to the bathroom, and I ended up in Los Angeles. So be sure to tune in. Now, we weren't able to do a live in-video interview like I did, so she phoned in. So you're going to hear her interview kind of podcast style, and the topic was, she did this great video on Steven Spielberg's really kind of elitist comments about Netflix and Netflix movies, and I thought she had a pretty good take on it, so I want to get her thoughts on that, and also what that means for conservatives who live here in Hollywood, who are trying to get movies made and movies done. So grab those headphones or turn up your volume and take a listen to my interview with the Hollywood Conservative. Hi everyone, welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. I've got a very special guest with me. She is a host on The Rebel TV and America's Voice News. She does all kinds of other stuff. She did great coverage of CPAC and a whole bunch of other events, and she's been a big-time supporter of conservative politics right here in Hollywood. You know her as the Hollywood Conservative. Amanda, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we had this whole thing where Steven Spielberg, he kind of went off on a rant about Netflix films. In particular, I believe it was a response to Roma, and he was saying how, oh, they're basically like TV movies. They should at least go to the theaters for a little while before consideration for Academy Awards. And my reaction, now I have no connection to Hollywood whatsoever, other than I know a few people who are directors in film, but I'm not involved in the filmmaking process at all. I'm strictly an outsider. I heard that, and I went, wah, wah, wah. And you had like some really great commentary on it. You did a video for The Rebel, for your show on The Rebel, and I thought you had a really good perspective on it. So could you just give a rundown on some of your thoughts?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so obviously you have various different factions, unions, organizations within Hollywood. One of them, obviously probably the most famous, other than Screen Actors Guild, is the Oscar Committee and the Oscar Academy. So the director's branch governor is Steven Spielberg. Obviously, Steven Spielberg is a legend in Hollywood. He's been doing movies for decades upon decades upon decades. He has a traditionalist mentality, which as a conservative, believe me, I 100% appreciate preserving things the way that, you know, that there is an element to tradition that keeps things consistent and almost serves as quality control. And Steven Spielberg's intent and the comments that he made regarding the Oscars and the comments that he made regarding Roma are that one of his primary purposes in filmmaking is to provide consumers with a really great theater experience. So theater experiences go all the way back to, you know, obviously the days when silent movies existed. It really started booming ironically, during the mob era with Al Capone. Uh, and so that's something that Steven Spielberg really strives to deliver to the audience. So I appreciate that. Now, the issue that he is having with films like Roma, and one that you and I were talking about, they are on Netflix, and therefore consumers, you pay obviously your monthly subscription fee, and I really appreciate that as well, because I am I am convicted to a fault. Sometimes I am very, very obstinately convicted about the things that I support and the things that I absolutely will not support. So one of the things that I am constantly finding myself conflicted in is going to the movies and paying $15 to see a film, because here in Los Angeles and LA, the cheapest place that you can go see a movie that's not one of these like dumpy theaters from the 80s, you're gonna pay $13. Of course, that goes all the way up to $40 in the theaters where you have a waitress or waiter or whatever. So I have always been very selective as far as what I will see in theaters. Now, I am a horror movie type of person, so the movies that I will pay to see in the theater, for instance, last fall I saw Halloween, the Michael Myers movie. On April 5th, I will be going to see Pet Sematary, even though I despise Stephen King. But for the most part, I tend to shy away from seeing things in theaters. Now, the reason that this affects Steven Spielberg, and what I talked about in my video, is so Martin Scorsese is another legendary director in Hollywood. He is directing a new film that's coming out later this year called The Irishman. And, I mean, it's got a star-studded cast as far as mob movie actors. So he is doing this in cohort with Robert De Niro and Robert De Niro's production company, Tribeca. And Steven Spielberg's issue with this is that you put out these movies on Netflix, like Roma, like the one that you and I were just talking about with Ben and Casey Affleck and Charlie Hunnam. And these are strictly on streaming platforms, so you're not getting any type of theater experience. And as I said earlier, that's one of Steven Spielberg's biggest things with movie making is providing the audience with that theater experience. So as it stands, in order to be considered for an Oscar, there are no limitations or requirements regarding a theatrical release window. Steven Spielberg is vying for there to be at least a 4-week box office release time span, meaning that, for instance, Roma, who won lots of Oscars but did not win Best Picture, a lot of people think that's because members of the Academy voted against it because the fact that it was streaming and did not have a theatrical release. So Steven Spielberg is pushing to make a requirement that they have to go to the theaters, therefore they have to produce box office numbers. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Now, again, when I hear this, I'm going, and I actually had this conversation with my Daily Wire colleague Paul Bois, who he is a big-time film traditionalist, and he and I were kind of debating back and forth because he was saying that he agrees with Steven Spielberg, and I said I really don't care what Steven Spielberg thinks, I just want to see a good movie. And my thing is, I would rather sit at home with my wife and watch a mediocre Netflix film and maybe get a good few laughs out of it, maybe make fun of the movie, than go see an epic like you were saying and pay, $15. And, I did go see Captain Marvel. Like, you are a horror film fan. I am a comic book fanboy, so I went and saw Captain Marvel with some friends. And I paid the money. I even paid to reserve a seat because I wanted to see it so badly. And I feel like part of this issue is there's a little bit of a disconnect, because we saw this, I can't remember the director's name, but there was another director a few months ago who kind of fussed at audiences and said, you need to like better movies. I can't remember his name. I wrote a piece about it on my blog. But I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect where they just think, oh, these peasants should come to our movies no matter what because I'm Steven Spielberg. But really, the audiences are going, well, we don't really care about famous names anymore other than maybe Chris Pratt. So do you understand what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I totally agree. Look, if it was up to me, other than certain horror films, and by the way, you say that you're a comic book junkie. Have you seen the trailer for Brightburn?
I have. That looks pretty good.
It looks really good. That's another one that I will probably see in theaters. But I'm the same way. I would much rather sit at home and watch something that's just streaming on Netflix, or even wait until a box office film that is released on, iMovies or whatever for Apple TV. I'll wait. I don't really care. Now, I can't joke around and laugh during the movie with my fiance, because since he's an actor, he gets very, very mad at me when I talk during movies. And his biggest pet peeve with me, because I'm also a very skeptical person, as a journalist, what's the phrase? If your mother tells you she loves you, check her sources.
Right.
So every time I watch a movie, I'm always dissecting it. Like, I'm like, oh, that chemical compound could never cause an explosion that size, or this would never happen. And Ryan's like, Amanda, you are ruining it. I'm like, look, I'm keeping Hollywood honest, because they're not working hard enough to make things feasible. But anyway, I'm in the same boat, with the exception of a few movies a year that I actually would like to see. Like, for instance, Iron Man. Iron Man on my 65-inch TV at home, while my 65-inch TV at home is a very nice TV, it's not the same as seeing it on a 40 by 60 foot IMAX screen in the Chinese theater. So I'm in the same boat, and I think a lot of Americans feel that way, because, Donald Trump, when he was elected, it was for lots of different reasons. One of them being because a lot of Americans, 62 million Americans, were tired of feeling like Washington, D.C. operated on its own terms,
Right.
and separate from the American people. Another reason is because for years and years and years, Hollywood has looked down its nose at America. And I think that Americans are starting to wake up, because conservatives are kind of split on the idea of boycotting. A lot of people are like, oh, free market, don't boycott. For me, I feel like you can use the same argument to support boycotting, because I feel like the most effective voice we have as conservatives is utilizing our wallet. And if you don't patronize a certain actor or a certain director or a certain business, then you are essentially using your free market power to take away theirs. This is kind of a side story, but I suffer from severe migraines, and I have to have a certain amount of caffeine every morning. I can't have too much. I can't have too little. If I leave the house without having my coffee, I will literally drive out of my way to go to a different coffee shop other than Starbucks, even if Starbucks is right by the studio where I'm going. So I am a fan of boycotting, and I think that conservatives for a while, for a long time up until recently, have been able to compartmentalize Hollywood from their ideological and political beliefs. And I think that we are seeing a time when people can no longer deny the fact that Hollywood, for the most part, hates them and has a lot of contempt. And something I brought up in my Rebel video was what Bill Maher said about,
I couldn't believe it. I mean, he just was honest. He was just like, we hate you.
Yeah, and it's disgusting that he feels that way, but at least he's vocalizing it, because it's how Hollywood has felt about us for a very long time. And like I said, there are a few exceptions. The majority of exceptions I know through my fiance. But for the most part, yeah, they hate us, and I don't see any reason to support them, to blanket support them when they have such disdain for us. And, I don't understand how Hollywood continues to operate that way and have such contempt for us, because if it weren't for people buying tickets to their movies, they would have no money, they would have no lifestyle, they would have no power. But, it's kind of, like I said, that kind of ties into the way that Americans have felt about Washington, D.C. for a long time.
And, it's funny, because I actually rewatched Hell or High Water recently. And I'm from Texas, so that movie really hit home for me, because the guy, he made a Southern Gothic tale in the state of Texas that did not demean Texans. It was an honest look at some of the brutalities of Southern living. And I don't know if you've seen it, but
it's been a long time, but I've seen it.
But I remember it was up for Best Picture, and it finally hit me why it didn't win. It was because of opinions like Bill Maher. it tried to. It was a unique film that actually showed decent people living in Middle America. I guess Texas isn't really middle; it's Gulf Coast, but still, it's kind of that red state
Mentality
mentality.
wise, though, yeah.
Right, exactly. And so, but it seems like they're not getting the message so much. But because even with Marvel Comics, the comic books, it hasn't really been as bad as people say it is in the films, but in the comics, they've kind of doubled down on their SJW kind of stuff. They backed off of it, and now it's kind of creeping back in. And I feel like, is the wallet argument working? Because even though Marvel, the sales of comic books have kind of gone down, they're still being funded through the movies. And so I'm kind of curious, um, do you think that the power of the purse will eventually win out? Because everyone, even if whether you're red or blue, everyone sees green.
I do think that whether you're red or blue, everyone sees green. However, I don't know if the power of the purse is what is going to swing the pendulum back in the other direction towards sanity. We are at a fever pitch right now where Trump derangement syndrome, disdain for middle America / people on the right, that has reached a fever pitch.
Right.
And, if you study history, especially American history, you know that everything is cyclical. I hope that we are just like reaching that, what is the physics phrase? When the pendulum reaches that point where it's suspended in midair, with zero gravity, basically,
right.
And it's starting to swing back in the other direction. I feel like Donald Trump was a result of us swinging in that direction. So I don't know if it's going to be the power of the purse. I hope so, but you see all the time companies making very bad business decisions in the name of politics and in the name of social justice warrior causes. For instance, James Gunn, who is actually directing the movie we were just talking about, Brightburn.
Mm-hmm.
He's
producing it, but everyone knows he's really directing.
Producing, yeah. So he was released from his responsibilities with the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise because of some tweets that were uncovered from him that egregious content within these tweets about joking about raping and raping babies, and it was just disgusting. So Disney released him, and I actually did a video on that as well. But I just read yesterday as I was falling asleep that they have rehired him. So, I think that the politics of it, and you have these cushy relationships in Hollywood, and, we see it with Bryan Singer. So Bryan Singer, very prolific and profitable director in Hollywood. He has allegedly done many of the things that Michael Jackson did.
Right.
But Hollywood isn't really vocally or aggressively going after him. Now, why are they going after Michael Jackson, but they're not going after Bryan Singer? Well, Michael Jackson is dead. They can no longer extract their pound of flesh from Michael Jackson. Bryan Singer is still very profitable. He still makes good films. People still come to the movies to see him, or to see his movies. So they are not going to speak out on someone like that. And it just shows the hypocrisy in Hollywood, and it shows that, and there are instances of bad decision making all in the name of politics. And look, if people on the left can make these decisions based on their politics at with the chance of it hurting their business a little, why can't people on the right? When people say, "Oh, I'm not gonna boycott that," I definitely don't agree with this actor because he called, look at Robert De Niro. He called President Trump a son of a bee,
right.
and many, many other things. But people will still go see his films. Like, really, people, you can't be inconvenienced just a little bit to just not see that film. Is it really going to change your life if you don't see that film? So sometimes it ticks me off because I feel like people on the left, especially Hollywood, are so much more vocal about their beliefs and when it comes to actually living out those beliefs than people on the right are. But again, I think that goes back to, I think that is changing as evidenced by the election of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was the only one who was willing to go in there, take on the media, take on, Hollywood, take on the swamp. And people are like, I don't really care what his mannerisms are. I don't care how brash he is. I don't even care about his personal life. He isn't a perfect man, but I think that a lot of people felt like he was the perfect person for the job.
Now, let me ask you this, because I agree with you, and this is something that I've kind of noticed about conservatives, and I won't name any names or any publications, but sometimes when I read like movie reviews from legacy conservative outlets who may or may not be supportive of Trump, just in general, there seems to be like this what's the word I'm looking for? Like, oh, we're just going to go along with Hollywood because maybe they'll keep sending us screeners or whatever. And I feel like there is some, like, for instance, Dinesh D'Souza. I happen to enjoy Dinesh D'Souza's films. I think that they're really well made, even if his marketing schemes, or I should say marketing strategy, is a little off. I enjoy Dinesh D'Souza films, and I feel like conservatives will attack Dinesh D'Souza's films just to kind of get a good write-up in the New York Times. And now, again, I'm talking about specifically legacy conservative outlets. I'm not talking about, just everyday folks or, whoever. But so I feel like there's kind of like this hand in hand where conservatives are like, oh, well, they'll complain about Harvey Weinstein, but then they'll kind of go with the flow. And I feel like Trump is, that's like kind of the last thing that Trump hasn't really broken up yet. That Hollywood kind of has its tentacles in legacy conservative outlets. What do you think about that? Am I off base, or what do you think?
No, absolutely. I mean, there are plenty of conservatives, and again, I won't name names, who are willing to placate to the left because they still have this obsession with Hollywood, and you see it all the time with people who are in other businesses, and then they start to achieve some level of like pseudo fame or something, and they're totally willing to basically abandon their conservative values in the name of squishing up to those people on the left. And I do find it utterly appalling. I understand that there are people out there who don't agree with Donald Trump because of the things that he says on Twitter, the same things that he has done. But at the same time, there are things that President Trump has done. You can't deny the fact that we're safer. You can't deny the fact that we're more prosperous. And those are the types of things that, we elected him to do in office. So hating the president's mannerisms is not the same thing as hating his policies, and yet you still have a lot of those legacy media people out there who will criticize him just because they want to cushy up to Hollywood actors. And I try to say this as little as possible because my fiance is an actor, but people place actors on pedestals, and it has always confounded me because they are, and there's not a nice way to say this, they play dress up for a living.
Mm-hmm.
They're glorified court jesters, and where they get off thinking that they can look down their nose and sit on this pedestal of righteousness and look down at the rest of America is beyond me. And by the way, my fiance feels the same way. He doesn't take that industry too terribly seriously. He's not one of these method actors that has to, completely be consumed by a role and, acting is life, hashtag act or die. So it's confusing to me that there are still so many people in America, and frankly, it's a majority of America, who look up to people like this when they absolutely do not deserve it. Just look at this most recent scandal with the college admissions scheme.
Right.
That's Hollywood using your money to push your dumb child into college because they couldn't get in on their own merit. That's Hollywood.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear you say this, because I was actually in 2016. I was actually a never Trumper, but now I'm all on board the Trump train, and there were two reasons. One being how crazy the left is, and two, actually, never Trumpers pushed me out of the Never Trump movement, because it's exactly what you were saying. There's like kind of this. I won't say it's mainstream anymore, but there used to be this mainstream kind of facet to the conservative movement where they're like, oh, well, Trump is so terrible, we have to vote for Hillary Clinton. No, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And that's what pushed me into supporting Donald Trump, is listening to those crazies. So, and getting back on, the topic of conservative filmmakers and whatnot, as far as the, going back to what we were talking about, the streaming services, do you think streaming services could provide a future to get conservative media out there? Whether it be documentaries, or I just in December I watched a screener for a film called If You're Gone, directed by Brittany Goodwin. It was a amazing film. It was really, really emotional, very touching, and it's an indie film, and I feel like conservatives haven't really had, like, we've had direct to DVD and short runs in theaters, but I feel like streaming service could provide us an advantage. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think so too. And the reason I think that there is hope for conservatives on streaming platforms like Netflix is because Dinesh D'Souza's film is on Netflix.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think that and if they can put Dinesh D'Souza's film up there, I won't be surprised if Unplanned and Gosnell and those films end up on Netflix as well, because I'm not saying that the executives at Netflix are necessarily conservative, but they seem to see green more than they do red or blue, which, look, as a business owner and as an executive at a company like that, that's what you're supposed to see.
Right.
And you're supposed to look out for the interest of your employees. And if you are denying films on your platform because you don't agree with them, then number one, you're not a capitalist, and number two, it's ultimately going to be detrimental to your business.
And I want to ask you just kind of a this is a little bit of an off-topic thing, but people were saying that what was the film that won Best Picture?
Green Book.
That's right. People were saying it was the worst Best Picture since Crash, and I'm just curious. Do you? And I also, like, usually when they do Best Picture lists, they throw a bone. So like to the audience. So like 2018, I would say it was Dunkirk. 2017, I can't remember 2017's, but 2016 was Hell or High Water. And I'm curious, do you kind of agree with that assessment? Did you enjoy the Green Book? Because I know there was some controversy surrounding it and whatnot. Ginned up controversy surrounding it.
Yeah. I enjoyed Green Book. I heard a lot of people say that it was basically driving Miss Daisy all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying with Hell or High Water, I have a very strong reaction to films that portray Southerners in a negative light. I'm from Alabama, so of course they love to.
Oh, you're target number one, Alabama.
Oh, absolutely. So they love to frame us as rednecks and things like that. I think that Green Book did a good job of towing that line of showing, the unfortunate aspects of Democrat racist South, but not taking it too far.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed the film. I thought it was heartwarming. I thought that Mahershala Ali was really great. I thought that Viggo Mortensen was really great. I loved the music. I am a huge fan of Motown, so I loved the soundtrack. But I think that it deserved to win because there weren't really any other films to me other than The Favorite. I loved The Favorite. There weren't really any other films that I could finger to say, oh, that one definitely should have won.
That's how I was feeling. In my heart of hearts, I want to say Avengers: Infinity War should have been Best Picture, but I know that's not true. Really, in my humble opinion, I thought A Quiet Place should have been at least nominated. If not, then should have won. I thought it was the Best Picture of last year.
Was that the one with Sandra Bullock?
No, John Krasinski and Emily
I didn't
Blunt.
see that one.
Oh, okay. Well, you're a horror fan. You should definitely check it out. It's you're thinking of Bird Box.
Yes, yeah. Both of them you have to be quiet.
Right. Well, yes, and I haven't seen Bird Box yet, but from what I'm understanding, people who saw Bird Box but not A Quiet Place liked a Bird Box, but if you saw both, people tended to like A Quiet Place better. That's just
Interesting.
yeah, that's what people have said. You if you didn't see one, you thought Bird if you just saw Bird Box, you thought it was amazing. That's just what I have been just from gauging my friends, that's what kind of has been the reaction. So,
Well, I like Bird Box because I have a peripheral reason for liking it. I like Sandra Bullock
yeah,
for
she's a
a
great
few reasons.
actress.
Yeah, she's a great actress. She doesn't open her mouth and blab about politics all the time. And her aunt is a friend of my mom's,
Oh,
and
cool.
she calls her Sandy, and said she's just super down to earth. So, but I'll have to add A Quiet Place to my list.
Now, it is. Are you ready for the curveball question? We're winding
I'm
down.
ready.
All right. So, a bunch of movies coming out this year. You've already said that you're going to be seeing Pet Cemetery. Um,
Yes.
what is a horror story that you would like to see adapted into a film that either hasn't been adapted yet or did in the past, and you'd like to see a modern remake?
So it's actually already in the works, and it's adapted from a book. And Jacob, you I believe are younger than I am, so you probably didn't grow up with these books. But back in the day when I was growing up, we had book fairs in elementary school, and you could buy crossword puzzles, you could buy fiction, you could buy nonfiction, and like I made a beeline every year for the section that contained the book. It's called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh, I
And
have heard. I had some friends who were fans of that, but I did not
yes,
read them myself.
so it's a collection of short stories. And, again, this was elementary school when I was reading these, and they're terrifying now. I mean, these are some twisted stories, and they are actually adapting it to a film version. I have heard rumors, so I'm very excited about that.
Well, that's really cool. And where can people find you on in the social media sphere?
Sure. So on Instagram and Facebook, just search for The Hollywood Conservative. And on Twitter, because Twitter discriminates against long handles, I had to shorten it to the HWCon, THEHWCON.
All right.
And my website is thehollywoodconservative.us. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every day. And we have changed the sign-up process where you actually have to confirm with your email. But I used to tweet out about this because we used to not have that second step where you have to confirm via email. And I would always joke about, if you have an ex or somebody you want to get revenge on, I send out emails every day, so sign them up.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
What a fantastic interview. Amanda Head is amazing, and I'm so grateful that she came on and chatted with me. Be sure to find Amanda Head. She has videos with The Rebel TV where she hosts The Hollywood Conservative at The Rebel. She is also a host on America's Voice News, so definitely head over there and check them out as well. You can follow her on Twitter at at the HWCon. That's her Twitter handle. Look for her on Facebook and on Instagram. She's all over the place. Definitely follow her, like her stuff, whatever you got to do. Check out everything. Once again, thank you for watching. Like this video, subscribe, ring the bell, and share it out with all your friends so they can know about my channel. I do all kinds of other videos. I interview celebrity guests like Amanda Head. I also discuss comic books and movies and TV, books if you're a bookworm. So be sure to follow me on Twitter at RealJacobArry. Instagram is RealJakeberry. I took out the dot, so it's just at Jacob Arry. Facebook is Author Jacob Arry. My blog, where I do movie reviews and commentary, and I highlight sometimes some of my favorite hashtags. So be sure to head over there, jacobarry.blog, so you can check out that. Also, one last thing, don't forget to pick up your copy of my fantasy fiction novel, The Seven Royals, All Good Things. It takes your favorite fairy tale characters and puts them back where they belong in their fantasy world. It's got adventure, it's got magic, it's got dragons, knights, beautiful princesses, handsome princes, all kinds of incredible things. So check that out. It's available Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It's available for download at Kobo and iTunes. And of course, booklocker.com has it in PDF format for your ebook, and of course the paperback edition. So that's booklocker.com, barnesandnoble.com, Amazon.com, where they also have it for your Kindle. No audiobook yet, but who knows what the future holds. So definitely get your copy. And that's all the time I have for today. Be sure to check out everything that I just mentioned. Sit back, relax, have a great week, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.